If there's one good thing about Trump's presidency, it's
There
that...
definitely isn't.
Okay, but like, rhetorically speaking, if there's one good thing about the Trump presidency,
There's
it's that...
not one good thing about the Trump presidency.
It's that his ludicrous obsession with fake news might partially be responsible for a more widespread awareness that we should not blindly accept the media we're presented with.
Oh, man. I mean, that is a stretch. I mean, do you
No,
really
sis,
think it's going to
no.
have that
All right.
kind of...
I just wanted to see if I could say it with a straight face. There was so much we couldn't cover in one video about media literacy, so we made another. Last time we walked you through the importance of paying attention, not just to the messages your media is sending you, but the people trying to send you those messages, and the reasons that they might have for doing so. Remember those wild dairy ads trying to sell you on the idea that a frosty glass of whole milk has magical PMS alleviating powers? Yeah. But that's overt messaging. That's kind of easy to identify. What about the more subtle messaging that media employs to provoke and influence our reception of it? How do we recognize those messages? What exactly are the methods by which media influences us?
This is actually one of the more interesting aspects of media literacy, because once you start considering all the different elements that combine to make up a singular piece of media, you realize that there's a multitude of tools that creators use to compose a cohesive text. From the lighting to the costuming, the casting to sound design, the editing to the cinematography, there's a dense layer cake of elements that make up any single piece of work. In fact, some creators enjoy playing with some of these elements to create media that completely changes our perception of a work, as the makers of this famous spoof trailer for The Shining did back in 2007. Watch how one of the most iconic horror films of the past century gets defanged when you play with the editing, cue up Peter Gabriel's Salisbury Hill, and reframe the story as a feel-good family picture about an adorable scamp in need of a dad.
Sometimes, what we need the most is just around the corner.
I am your new foster father.
I'd do anything.
Climbing up on Salisbury Hill,
I love it.
I could see the city light. My heart going boom, boom, boom. Son, he said, grab your things, I've come to take you home.
Shining.
To really unpack what our media is telling us and how it shapes our perceptions, it's crucial that we don't begin and end our discussion of media literacy with the surface layer. What's underneath that dazzling, Pinterest-worthy frosting? Because sometimes a pipe is not a pipe, and sometimes it's so much more.
Let's start with an example that's pretty easy for folks to wrap their heads around once it's pointed out. The effect of sound on influencing our emotions and conveying meaning. Hearing folks are often not consciously aware of the sound design of a given piece, particularly if it's well executed. Nevertheless, we can be profoundly impacted by the way it helps shape our understanding. The way a piece of media sounds tells us important things, like whether what we're watching is horror, comedy, drama, news, or whatever. And its presence is so vital to the way that hearing folks gather meaning that when sound is absent, it's incredibly unsettling. And that feeling, too, helps us understand what's going on.
If you saw a commercial like this,
Texas, babies, corn dogs, jean shorts, CBS primetime, the suburbs, Tom Brady and Budweiser.
you would probably understand that the commercial was satirizing the kind of lazy patriotism that undergirds a lot of our understanding of American identity. But if the music was more like this,
Texas, babies, corn dogs, jean shorts, CBS primetime, the suburbs, Tom Brady and Budweiser.
you would probably suspect that you were supposed to take this whole red, white, and blue fantasy seriously. You might find the whole thing ridiculous, but it's not out of the realm of possibility that you'd find yourself stirred by the music behind the message, no matter how much your conscious mind disagreed with it. And just for kicks, what about this?
Texas, babies, corn dogs, jean shorts, CBS primetime, the suburbs, Tom Brady and Budweiser beer. Quiet country roads, the girl next door. Standing your ground.
Ugh. All right, you get the picture.
And speaking of getting the picture, have you ever stopped to think about the way you literally get the picture? Meaning, what happens when we pull back the curtain on the types of images that we're looking at? How does the camera tell a story? How does it communicate information about characters, often without us realizing it? Well, one way is through the angle of a shot. Often when directors want to communicate that a character is powerful, authoritative, or intimidating, they'll shoot that character from a low angle, placing the camera low to look up at the subject. In his noir classic Touch of Evil, director Orson Welles shot himself as corrupt police captain Hank Quinlan from a low angle in early scenes to make the character feel more threatening, while Stanley Kubrick, in his satirical film Dr. Strangelove, pushes the low-angle shot to almost comical extremes in scenes with the character of General Ripper, to satirize the very notions of absolute military power that General Ripper seems to possess. By contrast, a high-angle shot is often used to communicate that characters, even otherwise powerful characters, are in this moment small, daunted, threatened, overwhelmed, or powerless. For instance, this high-angle shot in The Avengers is meant to suggest that our heroes might be in real danger this time, just as we're meant to feel that Harry Potter is in real danger in this shot from the Order of the Phoenix.
Of course, it's not just the angle of a shot that informs our understanding of what's happening, it's also what and who the shot is showing us. And for most of Hollywood movie history, the people on our screens have overwhelmingly been able-bodied, cisgender white people. Hell, Touch of Evil stars the extremely white actor Charlton Heston as heroic Mexican police officer Miguel Mike Vargas. Yes, Western media has conditioned us to unquestioningly accept the centering of white people in our media. So much so that the very tools we use to make media have historically often been created and maintained specifically with white people in mind. As photographer Srita McFadden notes, a lot of the design of film and motion technology was conceived with the idea of the best representation of white people. And I don't mean to say that it was a deliberate and exclusionary practice, but it was much more of a willful obliviousness, if you will. So color film in its early stages pretty much developed around trying to measure the image against white skin. Kodak Eastman had a model on staff named Shirley, whom they used as a human face to meter the printed color stock. So she's a pale, white-skinned woman with dark hair. That's set against a rather banal background to try and see how white skin fared in a high-contrast light situation. So the Shirley cards became a rubric to set up or establish what would be a much more perfected color image. In other words, a lot of film was specifically developed using white skin as the standard. How such film might capture darker skin tones was not a concern for the people making it.
It's still quite common to deny the intersecting and long-term consequences of the racial bias of film technology. But the fact is, when social and technical pressures combine to make it easier to feature white people rather than people of color, the knock-on effects are huge. The overwhelming accumulation of images of white people implicitly reinforces the systematic erasure of people of color at every level of society. It may be corny to suggest that you can't be what you don't see, but we have only to listen to people of color, or queer folks, or the disabled community, who talk about the immense attachment they feel to those rare works that do feature them. This is not just about little black kids needing to see black doctors on TV. This is about kids who grow up believing that they are less than, because they haven't been shown any differently. They haven't really been shown themselves at all.
It's imperative that we pay attention to the way that media operates, not because it prevents us from enjoying the things we love, but because our enjoyment can only be deepened when we're more critically engaged with the things that move us. It's thrilling to consider all the ways that human beings create art and meaning, and a recognition of the complexity of our media shouldn't distract from that. But it's equally vital that we don't swallow everything we're given without questioning what we're being given. Society, culture, art, and media inform and shape each other. Meaning is created and lives are affected by the media we see. Every time we see images that reflect the kind of world in which we want to live, a just world, a more caring world, a more equitable world, we gather momentum to make those things a reality.
When we tell stories that reflect who we really are and use all the tools at our disposal to make those narratives compelling, we take another step closer to recognizing the full humanity of everyone on the planet.
But at the same time, the nonstop deluge of media that reaffirms the status quo of oppressive systems and beliefs must be countered. And we can only do that once we learn to identify and resist the ways that those messages are delivered and rendered palatable, cool, and compelling. Start paying attention to what you're seeing and what you're not. We have the potential to make the world in which we live a better, more inclusive one, and we also have the power to create media that represents the very best of us.
In other words, be critical of the media you love. Hey, if you liked this video, maybe consider sharing it with some folks.